Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. Breaking news out of State College, Pennsylvania. We potentially have an injury update with Nick Singleton. We'll get into that in just 1 second. No Shawn Kane tonight. He has gone under the flu, but I will be joined by special guest Donnie Collins here in just a little bit. We will get to UCLA and get your predictions in. All that and more. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you're listening. We'll see you in just a second. Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. I'm Cory Lestochi. Not with me, as always, the great Shawn Kane. Shawn is out today with the flu, which, to be fair, so is Nick Singleton. So perhaps, maybe, just maybe, Shawn Kane and Nick Singleton are hanging out and we have nothing to worry about. But the news out of practice this afternoon, just moments ago, Penn State beat reporters did not see Nick Singleton at practice, and James Franklin says at this stage he did not have an update for the beat reporters and said, quote, and this is a a funny quote, "We're wasting a question by asking about Nick Singleton. There's nothing to share at this stage." So let the speculation fly. Let me know on YouTube and on Twitter how you're feeling about it. To me, this does not seem like a, oh, no problem, we're okay here kind of situation. This doesn't seem like a flu. This seemed more of a, we don't know what the injury is yet situation here. Now, that is complete speculation, but doesn't make me feel great here at this point. Penn State obviously has UCLA at home this weekend, noon kick. Then they travel on the road to USC on October 12th, 10 days away. 3:30 kick, by the way, on CBS. That was announced a couple days ago. And they may not have their best player on offense. Quite concerning to say the least. At the very least, I think we can probably agree at this juncture that Penn State will likely not have running back Nicholas Singleton for the game against UCLA. Just don't see how we didn't get it's just a dealing with the bumps and bruises. We didn't get he just had the flu. We got at this stage, he had nothing to share, which to me tells me, or we're in for a disappointing update at some point. Again, purely speculation, but not great news out of Happy Valley just moments ago. Welcome into the show. If you haven't already, please make sure to fill out your Big Ten Pick'em. That will be closed before the Friday game this week. We will have Donnie Collins on the show tonight. Longtime guest here at Hardcore Penn State Football. I am without Shawn Kane, as you can see. He is potentially hanging out with Nicholas Singleton. I don't know. Tyler Huffman, welcome in on YouTube. He says, like you said on Twitter, you would think if it wasn't major, he would have done the bumps and bruises route. Yeah, I mean, the bumps and bruises count is pretty high. I mean, we've been trying to keep track of all the bumps and bruises. The fact that he did not go the bumps and bruises route, I think, is a little bit alarming. What do we know? What do we know for sure? The good news for this weekend, as we begin to preview UCLA here at Hardcore Penn State Football, is UCLA is not a very good defense, regardless of who the running back is. Katron Allen is more than capable, but also UCLA is not very good via the pass, giving up almost 300 yards through the air. So you would hope this could be a game where you can lean on your 5-star quarterback, you can lean on your tight end, and you can lean on these wide receivers to make some plays for you at home. Maybe, as I believe Audrey Snyder pointed out today at practice, that is why Ohio State transfer wide receiver made the switch and was late hanging out catching pass today. Maybe Julian Fleming was getting extra reps today because they're going to ask the passing game to do more without Nick Singleton. And now I would like to welcome into the show, longtime friend of the pod, Donnie Collins. How you doing, Donnie?
How you doing, man? How's it going?
Good. Shawn Kane's out sick today, so you just have me, unfortunately.
I didn't know you could take a sick day in this business.
That's the worst thing is, like, we don't offer sick days, so I don't really. He's not getting paid for it. I can tell you that.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear he's sick, because I was looking forward to kind of getting fully immersed in the podcast tonight.
It's quite disappointing. I mean, I think all the listeners. Okay, all the listeners are probably just already tuned out of this episode when they listen to it tomorrow, because they're gonna be like, "What the hell's the point?" I do have Shawn's prediction though for tonight, so we will be able to drop his prediction for the game. Donnie, you came in at a good time. I'm sure you've seen Nicholas Singleton not seen at practice today. James Franklin said he did not have an update at this stage. My kind of thought on that is he did not go the whole bumps and bruises routine. And he didn't just say he was just dealing with the flu or something. Are you as alarmed as I am that this potentially could be a more serious injury?
No, I'm never all that concerned until Saturday when you see who's playing or not. There's a lot of reasons players miss practices, and just because the media doesn't see it doesn't mean that it's anything other than what you think it is, or anything other than they're just sitting them out, or there's this class or whatever. So I'm not too worried about it, but certainly if you get to Saturday and Nick Singleton's not playing, that's a big deal. And yeah, it's tough to tell on a Wednesday what's going on when you're talking bumps and bruises potentially. So yeah, a lot could happen in 2 days, and Singleton's he's a gamer. He's played a lot. He's been a durable force for Penn State for the last couple of years. And yeah, but the thing that I think would be concerning is if he doesn't play, Cam Wallace is out. What do you got? What do you really have at that position? You don't really know, outside of Katron carrying the ball 30 times. Is that going to happen? Do you run do you beat the brakes off of Katron and run the risk of not having him the next week? It's a big deal, I think, in that situation if he can't play. But as of right now, I don't know that it's, to me, something that I, as a guy who covered the team for how many years, would have been too concerned about until Saturday.
Well, good. Calmer heads have prevailed here on the show, because I'm definitely alarmed by it. I feel like his status for Saturday is probably doubtful, just because we didn't get the old he's just dealing with a couple things. We got we're not sure yet kind of vibe, which maybe it's concussion. Maybe it's just something, small, a high ankle sprain, something like that is going to be week to week. And Franklin was honest with us. But I also feel like if it was something like that, we would have got the bumps and bruises. To me, it was more of, I got the vibe of we haven't done all the tests yet kind of vibe. Like, we don't know the severity yet.
I think that's the concern when James says you're wasting your question, because
Right.
You're wasting your question as it's too early to tell response from him. But I don't, either way, I don't usually get too concerned until you look down there on Saturday and then you see he's not in uniform. He's, that to me, when you look down there on Saturday morning, 10 a.m., 10:30 a.m., and if Singleton's in street clothes, you got an issue. And then you worry about how long is this really going to be an issue.
As someone that was on this beat for quite some time, I said that to you specifically, but how do you respond when Franklin says something like, "You're wasting your question"? I mean, how do you even? Oh, thanks, I appreciate that.
I never got that. I never got the "you're wasting a question" thing. I know a lot of people do, and look, I think it's mostly I didn't ask early enough in the press conference to have to address an injury. And the whole injury thing has changed over the years anyway. Not they don't talk about any reason, and especially at Penn State, they don't talk about injuries for any reason now, until it's obviously the year end thing. So unless you really believe it's a year end thing or something looked really bad, there's no reason to me, from where I'm asking a question to ask it. But yeah, I think when he says that, I think you have to take that as, well, that question has to be asked, and it's a player that's of consequence. It is, if the press conference is today and your first question is about Nick Singleton's health, I mean, it's got you have to ask that first. I don't know if you ask it if it's a third string linebacker's health. You don't come right out and say that, but Nick Singleton's a very important player, obviously. So I think you take that as what it is, and that being I'm just doing my job kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know why you would say that, though, if you're James. Don't say, just say, well, it's too early to tell and move on or whatever. Right. And that just don't. I think that's goading a response, or that's trying to say, don't ask me about injuries, and so or just if what he really wants to do, just say, hey, look, I'll address any injury question on Wednesday. It's just a much better time to do it. And I think that's kind of the way I look at it, unless it's a really severe case where you have a guy who's clearly hurt badly right in front of your eyes, or a guy like Singleton or Aller or Abdul Carter or someone like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you're exactly right there, right? I mean, this is potentially Penn State's best player on offense. I mean, if you have to go to USC in 10 days without your best, and obviously already your best player on defense in KJ Winston, like, that's a completely different game now than it was, say, 3 months ago. So I think, I feel like it's rude the way he answers that sometimes too, but that's kind of how it's been. Donnie, how have you been? What have you been up to? Just kind of give us a lowdown on what's been going on in your life. Not on the beat anymore, but I'm sure you're not really that far away from Penn State football.
Well, I was at the game on Saturday. So
you didn't want to stop by and have a couple of beers with me?
Yeah, I didn't know you were having them. I brought my wife and my son went to their, I don't want to say it's their first game. It's not. They were at the Maryland game when I was in the press box a couple of years ago. If you remember when that week it poured and they closed down all the lots, all the grass lots were closed down. They were at that Maryland game, and it poured the whole game, and it really wasn't.
Was that like 2018 maybe?
It had to be. It was 2018, 2019 in that area. It was not a great game for your first experience, to the point where my son, who was probably 5 or 6 at the time, doesn't even really remember it. So
good.
Got tickets for this one, brought him to that, and that's so I still follow everything. I'll never say never. I don't know that I'll never cover another game. I think that there's a pretty good odds that I will be at some point someday maybe back. But right now I'm doing editorials for the.
Is it too early at this stage to give us an answer? Is that what you're saying? Too early in this stage? Dealing with some bumps and bruises?
Yeah. Well, you wasted your question right there. No. I just it was all this happened really quick. There's a big history back. If the Times was purchased last year, it's a lot of comings and goings among the personnel at the paper. I always wanted to try to write editorials. I think that was to me like a down the road goal when I was, winding down my career, maybe give that a shot. But the opportunity came up. There were some reasons it was offered, probably. So I took it. I took the opportunity when it was given to me, and it's been great for my schedule. I don't work weekends anymore. I could just sit and watch the game. I don't have to write about things I don't want to write about with Penn State just because everybody else is writing about them.
Injuries,
maybe some other things too. But that's what I'm doing. I'm just kind of writing a little bit more about presidential elections and a little less about Penn State, even though I have written a little bit about Penn State just on a different page. But
that's why you and Shawn would get along so well, because Shawn gets very well immersed in the political department too. You guys probably geek out all the time about stuff like that too.
Yeah, it's a funny story. So I did a story on a guy last week who came in. He was from the Switzerland NPR, basically their answer to NPR. And he came into Lackawanna County, where Scranton is, to do a story on the importance of the county in the upcoming election. And I got to do the story on him doing the story and all that. And originally, he didn't want me to be the guy interviewing him, even though I was the guy in the position he wanted to be. So he basically said, I looked up your stuff. You cover a lot of sports. You do a good job, but we're looking for somebody who's got some political knowledge. And I said, basically, I was a political science major in college. I've been following this forever. I just
what else do you need?
Yeah, I'm just kind of doing it the opposite way. I followed politics really closely for 20 years and covered Penn State football professionally, and now I'm kind of doing politics professionally and covering Penn State, or watching Penn State football as a kind of an interested participant right now. So it's basically just just doing it the opposite way. But yeah, I don't want to say, oh, I'll never go back to sports, or I'll never if the opportunity came up and it was the right opportunity, that I wouldn't take it. But yeah, it's definitely different. It was definitely weird because I'm sitting out there watching the game on Saturday at Beaver Stadium.
You don't have to write any notes down or anything?
No, and I'm probably about, honestly, 30 feet away from where I sat in the press box, and I swear it was not like I was in the same building. It was just a totally different experience.
That's good though. That's good that you're able to separate that. The Mighty Jew on YouTube says that he loves politics, so I guess maybe you and the Mighty Jew can get together sometime and talk politics. Mighty Jew is a community member for us around here, so nice to know that he likes politics. Donnie,
I like them. I'm saying I'm interested.
You're interested.
Interested.
It's like a car accident to a certain degree.
It is. I like the strategies involved. That's what I was going to be when I went to Penn State. When I majored in politics, I was like, I'm going to run campaigns and stuff. And then I very smartly got out of that. Just quick.
I'm pretty sure, and I'm sure maybe Shawn's watching live tonight. Pretty sure Shawn was a poli-sci major as well. So again, you guys have a lot in common. I'm sorry that I wasn't the one sick today, and it was Shawn. But the good news is, seriously, every time that you want to come on a show, we'd love to have you on. Let's talk a little more Penn State football, because Shawn had a good question yesterday's show that I think he would want to ask you, and that is, do you like the Bo Prabula package more, or do you like the Tyler Warren package more?
The Tyler Warren package more. It makes more sense to me. The Bo Prabula package, to me, you're playing 10 on 11 if Drew's out there, and you're telegraphing your play if Bo's out, if Drew's out and Bo's in, which never happens. But you don't think Bo's going to throw. You don't think it's a legit. You see Bo as an offensive coordinator. That's the guy. He's getting the ball there. Not really a mystery as to what kind of play you're running. And frankly, I don't think he's as good a quarterback as Drew. I know that a lot of fans, I don't want to say a lot, but I've heard fans say, well, he deserves the chance. I think the way Drew's playing this season shows he's by far the best quarterback on the roster. And I think there's some reasons to play Bo that might not be good. And I might leave it at that. But I think when you're putting your backup quarterback out there, you're putting him out there, and you're putting your offense in a spot where you wouldn't prefer to be. So why do that? But the Warren package is a little different. Now, I think they ran it in a spot where I didn't like it on Saturday, but what I really like about it is they've run it every different way. Tyler's thrown a pass, Tyler's kept the ball, Tyler's handed off, and he's shown a lot of athleticism. The touchdown on Saturday, it happened right in front of me. He took off from probably the 4-yard line. I was shocked he was able to clear the goal line there, but he did. He's a tremendous athlete. It puts a tremendous athlete in a position where he could do a couple of things. He's a former quarterback, so you have to be wary of him making a play with his arm. So you have to kind of honor that. And I get that I'm kind of talking ways where I just criticize the Prabula package, but he can do the same kind of things.
Right.
But I think the reason I like the Warren package better is they use it where I would use the Prabula package, near the goal line, inside the 5 or the 10, give defenses something extra to think about. I just kind of like where they use it. To me, it's the same kind of deal, though. And I do like getting Warren the ball in a way that he isn't usually getting it. So I do like it. I think there's some other things you could do with it. And I didn't get why they had him in there in the situation where they didn't pick up it was
3rd and 7.
3rd and 7. Yeah, it didn't make any sense to run it there because you're not you're not doing that to get 7 yards. You're doing it to get 4 or 5.
Right.
But I think mostly you see that package come in. You think it's in a situation where it could work. It's in a situation where it makes sense. The Prebula package, I don't always think it's in there when it makes sense. I'm sure it makes sense to the coaches, but it just doesn't make sense to me.
What about, I mean, how much do you care at all about messing up Drew Aller's rhythm when it comes to something like that, where you're taking him out? He might have a nice completion, and then you're going right to a Bo package or going right to a Warren package. Do you feel like they need to let him cook a little bit?
Yeah, I do. And I don't mind it if it's a consistent use of the package. Again, inside the 10, inside the 5, if Drew knows, hey, we got a 1st and goal at the 4, a 2nd and goal at the 3, you're out. He's coming in. It's gonna be Warren, or it's gonna be Bo, whichever one. I don't think that's a disruption of rhythm. I think that's a roll. When you get to when you pick up a 1st down, you move the sticks, you complete a 3rd and 7, and then you're at the 31, and here comes Bo to throw a screen pass or run a sweep or whatever it is. That to me is more of a rhythm breaker than, hey, you got it inside the 5. Come on out. We're gonna run a package here that scores 95% of the time. I don't like outside the 20, inside the 20s, inside the 15s. Really, I don't like throwing Bo in for a play or two here or there. I don't see the point of it, because Drew's I think Singleton's your best offensive weapon, but I think Drew is definitely your best quarterback. He makes every throw. He's right. Played well enough to keep him in there. And here's the other thing about Drew that he doesn't get near enough credit for. Is he a far inferior runner to the Bo? I don't see that. I think he's a pretty good runner. I think the only reason to throw Bo in there in that situation is if the situation calls for a quarterback sneak and you don't want Drew to take the hit. But I think I don't like the 2 quarterback system at all. I think as a quarterback, you want to be in the rhythm. You're in command. When you're out there, it's you calling all the shots. I don't like somebody else coming in there calling the shots for 5 seconds and then, hey, you're back in a second. To me, there's no need for it other than you feel like you have to give Bo a look.
So, you specifically, I remember we had you on the podcast around February, March of 2023, and you were already very high on Drew Aller at that point. Had a decent year, but, not an amazing year. This year, Shawn and I have really been impressed with Drew Aller's confidence and swagger and moxie and really just display of emotion and passion and command of the huddle. That has really stuck out to us. Where are you at with Drew Aller? And I mean, do you think, like, say Nick Singleton is out for a couple weeks here? I mean, UCLA's got a pretty bad pass defense. Do you feel good about Drew Aller, taking control of this offense and being that kind of 5-star guy that fans really have been waiting for Penn State quarterback for quite some time?
I do. Does he have the receivers to fully hit that 5-star level? I don't know. I still am not convinced on that. I'm not unconvinced, but I'm not convinced. Last year, I thought he had exactly the year last year that I thought he was going to have. I actually thought he protected the ball quite a bit better than I envisioned, because that's just not something you see a first-year starting quarterback do. And I know he played as a freshman in 22. Yeah, 22. But he played in situations like outside of that Purdue game that were very controlled, situations where there was nothing he couldn't do anything to hurt them. And he went in there and played very well in situations where he went and should have played well. But there's a lot of different things. He's on film more. He didn't have the receivers last year that I think he needed to help him get over the hump. And you could be a 5-star quarterback and have all the intangibles you want. Cory Collins wasn't an impactful player until his senior year. He was kind of the same thing Drew was last year, a guy with a lot of potential who never quite got over the top. And I think Drew this year, with his number one, the realization that he had to be better, that he had to go out and part of getting better was being more commanding of the offense, being more of I don't want to use the word leader, but being more the guy who that whole thing goes through and understanding what that means. And whatever he did with the receivers in the offseason, however he worked with the running backs, how maybe Kotelnicki had a lot to do with that. But it's worked. He's been a lot better this year than he was in any 4-game stretch in 2023. I think that's indisputable. Could he win without Singleton? Yes, he still has Katron. Could he win by throwing more? I think that's a good question. I think he's got all the potential in the world to do that. He's got the skill set to do it. Does he have the receivers? Like I mentioned earlier, I don't know, but I think they've played well. I think at the receiver position, and part of this is Drew. These guys have played well. Not and a big part of it is Wallace hasn't been hurt, so he's done a really good job. Yeah, cross your fingers, because that could happen. This is football. You see, I got Nick Singleton's a tank, and you might not have him this week. So you look at Harrison Wallace. Clifford's been good in spots. I think they've gotten something out of Fleming when they've used them. I think they'd like to have Caden Saunders. It hasn't really worked out health-wise for him yet, but the way that Wallace has stepped up, the way they've used Warren, the running backs of Katron's a really good receiver. Yeah, I don't think we've seen fully what Katron could be as a receiver out of the backfield. So I think they still have enough, but Drew has to play well. And yeah, there were times on Saturday, I think, where he forced some things, especially on some of those runs where he should have kept it and decided to try to do too much a little bit with his arm there and dump off some throws. That I don't think it was. I think that was ill-advised. But Drew can't put a lot of pressure on himself. He's got to go out there and just play instinctively and play like he can. And the last thing Penn State needs is Nick Singleton's out and Drew putting all the weight of the world on his shoulders. I don't think that works well for Drew. So I think he's got to go out and just kind of play within his self, play, do the things he can do, maybe step up in some areas. And Kotelnicki will be a big factor in that as well. But yeah, I think Drew is. I think you're very happy Drew's your quarterback. Who's the better quarterback in the country? Who would you rather have, talent-wise? Who's the better
Jackson Dart?
I don't know. I saw them both. I mean, you saw them both up close. Drew's physically a better player to me. So
it's hard.
Does Jackson Dart help you if Singleton's out? I don't know. Maybe
I'd probably take Jalen Milroe too, just from a.
Oh, okay.
I don't think from a strictly like NFL prospect perspective, but if Penn State had Milroe at quarterback, I don't know if they would be able to lose the game on offense, just from the sense of I don't know how you'd be able to key in on Singleton or him at the same time.
That's interesting. Yeah, Milroe's playing well. I'm trying to word this in a way that's not going to give away my sources. I know Milroe's playing well, and they're very pleasantly surprised at how well Milroe's playing at Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, the way he went up to Wisconsin on the road, and I mean, I know he did a lot with his legs, but they looked lethal up there. And well, he's looked obviously really good, even against really good competition, like Georgia. There's probably a couple other guys, but as far as in the Big Ten, I mean, I don't know if there's anybody in the Big Ten.
What would Michigan do if Michigan would love to have Aller?
Is Curtis Rourke the best quarterback in the Big Ten?
I love Curtis Rourke. When he played Penn State against Ohio, I think it was Frank Bodani. I might have been Rich, but I told Frank, I said I really like this quarterback. And
I do too.
I thought that was a very slick pickup by Indiana.
That was the first year we had our podcast, and we did a deep dive, and we were like, Curtis Rourke is a really good player for Ohio, even back then. So it's really cool to see him get an opportunity with good old Kurt Sig over there. Oops. One more question before we kind of talk a little more UCLA, because I got to ask you, kicking situation. You moving on from Sahadak?
That's a tradition at this time of year. I think this is one of those situations where, let's be honest, they want Sahadak to win the job.
Yeah. So
he's going to get the first chance every year. And there's an obvious reason they want Sahadak to win the job. Essentially, he's the only scholarship kicker they have. The only guy. So if it's close between him and Barker or Meyer or whatever, And it was just like it was close with him and Falcons last year, and he beats out Falcons, and they were crazy because Falcons was so steady and Sahadak was so erratic. So I think they're always in this situation going to give Sahadak the first look. I think they gave him the first look. I think there was a reason. I'm a big studier of the James Franklin press conference every week. There is a really big reason when was it Bowling Green or was it Kent State when he hit the couple of Bowling Green when he hit the couple of kicks, right?
Yeah.
And James went nuts about it and said, "Oh, he did a really great job." And it was not a, it was a situation where he should have hit the kicks. I mean, a legit kicker hits the kicks,
right?
But James really made a big deal about it. Well, that's why it's a confidence issue with the kid. They're worried about him. The damning thing from Saturday wasn't the 2 missed field goals. It was the 4th and 2 when you could have gone up, or the 4th and 3 when you could have gone up 2 scores, and it was a kind of a chip shot, but they didn't send him out there. They go for it. And if you're thinking we have a better chance to pick up 4 than picking up than hitting the kick, that's not showing a lot of confidence in your kicker. And I think I think every fan there was ready to move on from Sahadak. I think if you're a coach, you take a more measured approach to it. If you're covering the team, you take a more measured approach to it because there's a reason he's kicking, but it's clear the reason he's kicking was he's the scholarship guy. So now do you move on to Barker? Yeah, I would be absolutely stunned if Barker doesn't get the next chance. And if he does well, he'll be the kicker for 3 years.
That was the other funny thing too, is like I think Audrey Snyder asked that question on the press conference earlier in the week. Like basically like, do they practice? Or like how well do they practice? And like, and Franklin was a little upset about that question too. But I mean, it's like we don't know. Like we got one update, I don't know, midway, maybe 3/4 of the way through fall camp. That was like they're all about the same, and he threw out some numbers, and that was it. And you're like, okay, well, based off those numbers, like he gave us some like 80, whatever they were all really close. I'm like, if we're only hitting 85-ish% in practice, like realistically, what does that mean in the game time situation? Like I would assume it probably drops by 10%. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's why he kind of laughed at that question, which was again a legit question. You have to ask that question. I mean, I'm surprised it lasted that long. But that's one of the things the reason the kicker wasn't addressed is I always ask about the kicker. I always have the holder and the snap or two, but yeah, I think you laugh because how seriously do you take the practice numbers anyway? Of course you're going to hit more in practice, and some guys, I think it works the other way. I think it worked the other way with Falcons. In the games, he was better than he was in practice. The atmosphere didn't bother him. It helped him become better, and I think you see it from year to year too. Guys become more acclimated to the atmosphere. Jordan Stout, he's a guy who kicked better once he got used to the atmosphere.
Right.
So yeah, I think very rarely do you see a guy like Pinniger who goes on these incredible runs. He hits 20 and 25 in a row and then misses 3. And that's just not the way kickers are. It's 50-50. And when you're a nervous wreck, and I think Sahadak he's got a scholarship, but I think he's also a nervous wreck. So we'll see where they go this week. If Sahadak's the kicker this week, then the numbers aren't as close as James is saying. But I believe they probably are, and they're going to give another guy a shot just to see if they can catch lightning in a bottle here. But I'll harken back to post Virginia in 2012 when Sam Ficken, who became a really great kicker, missed a bunch of kicks in that game and cost him the game. And Bill O'Brien said after the game I don't know, it might have been one of those off the record things. I probably shouldn't say it, but he said, you'll never see me give a scholarship to another kicker again. and I buy into that. How often do you get a scholarship kicker who's so much better than a walk-on kicker or a transfer kicker that you found out of the Ivy Leagues? It just, and that's not going to matter anymore. But when as far as roster building, I would think that's a good way to go, because the kicker is lightning in a bottle anyway. They haven't recruited kickers very well, because the last scholarship punter they had before Thompson, who was really a transfer, was a guy who's kicking at Rice now.
The other thing too is like you go all the way back to like Alex Barbier, and he was a scholarship guy that couldn't hit the broadside of a barn even in practice. I remember like being in the student section and like in warm-ups, like a PAT, he was missing the net. Not even the goals, he was missing the entire net. So like another scholarship guy that was highly rated coming out and the Cole's kicking or whatever else it is. And didn't. But you're right. Now that you have the transfer portal, why don't you go to the Ivy League? Why don't you go to D2 guys that have proven consistency for 2 or 3 years already and just keep plucking them out?
I do it every time. And I get why you fall in love with the prospect guy. I mean, Barbier, I remember him because it sounded like a howitzer when he contact the ball, but you didn't know where it was going. You're right. He was
like a true howitzer.
Accurate. Yeah, exactly. and he didn't, to my knowledge, didn't make any kind of impact anywhere else. So yeah, it's not like these guys are. I guess Paqueta is punting pretty well for Rice, but it's tough when you're really ranking these guys off of camps, and it is one position where the situation and the crowd and the atmosphere does matter, kind of maybe more than it does for anybody else.
UCLA, this is going to be the first Pac-12 team coming to town for Penn State. First game against one of the new 4 teams. UCLA is not very good, Donnie. They're pretty bad. The spread, I think, is at 27 right now. Biggest news is Ethan Garbers is questionable. I believe their coach said that they were going to give it a go. Franklin said that they're preparing as if Garbers is going to go. But even if he goes, right now Garbers is 57%, 3 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Running the ball wise, TJ Harden has 125 carries, 3 yards per carry. They only have 1 rushing touchdown so far on offense. If you look at this UCLA team, is there anything you're concerned about or things you want to pay attention to? Or is this going to be a field day for Penn State?
I think Penn State wins pretty easily. I mean, what does Penn State do well? And to me, it doesn't. The other team doesn't matter so much to me ever, as unless it's in relation to what does Penn State do very well. So Penn State has protected Allard pretty well. Penn State has blocked the run pretty well. Penn State has run the ball extremely well with those 2 backs. Allard's played well. UCLA has done anything that shows you they could stop any of that. I mean, they haven't stopped the run. When was the last time they had a sack? Week 1?
I was going to say they are 110th in the country in sacks right now.
They don't rush the passer well. I mean, everyone knew this is going to be kind of a transition year. Deshaun Foster is. I'm really rooting for the guy because number one, that's a great job, and number 2, he's a guy who loves it. They've lost coaches. It's been to lose Chip Kelly, Danton Lynn. It's been a tough road for UCLA. So they brought in somebody there who wanted the job, and I think that's kind of the future of college coaching. Somebody who wants to be there for the long haul, and I'm really hoping for them that he could do that. But he was kind of left with a roster that was untenable, and they weren't going to win this year no matter why. Here's a question: Garbers is going to he's 50-50, whatever number you want to put on it. Do you want him to not play? You want to take your chances with him or whoever the backup is?
Right. That's you want the unknown or do you want the known? Exactly.
Yeah. And I don't think what he's done, James will talk him up, but I don't know if what he's done is is tantamount to not wanting him to play. So I think it's an easy one for Penn State. And plus it's an easy one anyway, because it's a 9 a.m. start after traveling across the country for UCLA. It's a brutal position for UCLA to be in. Now, I think where it's tough for Penn State is when you're in the conference, and these conference games matter more obviously than the non-conference games do. When you're trying to win the Big Ten, I don't know if anyone's really trying to win the Big Ten. It'd be nice if you did, but I don't know if that's the ultimate goal here anymore with the playoffs so attainable. But the challenge for Penn State here is you don't know anything about UCLA except what you're getting on film. And I know James on Monday, I thought it was a great question. It's what I would have asked. Uh, I would have asked, how do you prepare for a conference opponent that you don't know? It's not even totally different. You don't know the culture, you don't know the history, you don't know anything really about it, and that stuff does matter in preparation. So maybe UCLA has something for Penn State that they don't see, but I don't think so. I don't see it on film, and I think this is a game where they're not doing anything all season that scared you. If they're going to come out and surprise you on Saturday, tip your cap to them. But I don't see that happening. I don't think anybody sees that happening. So I just think this is a team that doesn't, they have some injuries. Penn State's got injuries. I mean, look at Penn State's participation report. There's more outs on there than any other team in the Big Ten. But you look at UCLA, and there's just not much that scares you there.
Yeah, Franklin has mentioned that they have dealt with more injuries this year than previous years before. And I do want to mention UCLA will end up traveling the most of any team in the FBS this year. Like, yes, they have to travel a lot from the West Coast to all the Midwest teams and obviously Penn State, Maryland, Rutgers, et cetera. But they also went to Hawaii and they also went to LSU. So that they've already traveled a bunch. I mean, they probably missed out on probably 10, 15 practices just because of traveling. Like, they're way behind the 8 ball, let alone all the traveling that they've had to do and that just natural wear and tear and the effect it has on your team. So they're very much behind the 8 ball coming into this game on Saturday.
Yeah, they would never schedule the Hawaii game if they knew they were going to be in the Big Ten. And the Big Ten did them no favors with the schedule because I think they have Penn State, they go back, and then they come back out east. I think that's the way the schedule goes for them because I think they have Rutgers in 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
They're at Rutgers, and then they follow that up with a trip to Nebraska.
Yeah, it's just not. It's the travel in this league is going to be brutal, and once every 10 years you're going to get a schedule that James is one of these years. James is going to be complaining so much about the schedule that it'll be hysterical.
They'll start on the road for the first 3 games on the road or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be at Purdue, at Wisconsin, at USC, something crazy like that. They'll have a bye week in between. But I honestly don't think their schedule this year is that. I don't love that at USC, back for a bye week at Wisconsin.
No, me neither.
I don't love that.
I don't either. That was one of my bigger concerns coming in. One of the things I took away from this last game, though, is they do have the offensive line to run block successfully. And as Audrey Snyder likes to say, is the run game does travel well. And, well, Wisconsin's without their quarterback. So I was very nervous about that because Franklin teams after a bye is already not great. Then on the road, after the USC game, they could be coming off a loss and then a bye. But I just don't think Wisconsin's very good now. That game seems a lot easier than it did, say, two months ago.
I thought Wisconsin was going to be a lot better. They were my sleeper pick in the conference this year. I thought they'd be top 5. I really did. They look horrible, and it's not a. Fickle's in some trouble there if he can't turn it around.
They're going to go back to just power eye in a second here. Exactly. They got one more year before they're like, no, we're going to run the football every play.
Exactly. You're going to do it our way.
Let's go to the pick'em real quick and jump through these games. Michigan State at Oregon. I assume you're feeling pretty good about Dylan Gabriel and company, and Jonathan Smith's got some work to do out there.
Yeah, I don't love Oregon. I don't know if I think Penn State. You could rank them behind them, but I think Penn State's a better team.
You think Penn State's the second best team in the conference right now?
Yeah, I do. I thought they were the second best team coming in. I'm not a huge Gabriel guy, but he's certainly you got to get him early, and nobody's gotten him. So once he settles in there, I think he's a tougher customer to deal with in November than he is right now. But we'll see, November in the Big Ten what Oregon looks like. But they're certainly good enough this week against Michigan State. Michigan State's not very good either.
No, I'm going to go with Oregon as well. 2 teams that are just really bad. Purdue at Wisconsin this week. Purdue wasn't even able to cover against Nebraska the previous week.
That's a tough one. I'm kind of waiting for Purdue to pull something off here. I don't think
to beat somebody they're not supposed to.
Yeah, I don't think they're as bad as they could be. But Wisconsin's almost got to win this. We'll go with Wisconsin.
I'm with Wisconsin as well. One of the better games of the weekend, which is not a great weekend, Iowa at Ohio State. Caleb Johnson, the running back for Iowa's an Ohio native, said he wouldn't have gone to Ohio State, even if they recruited them, which I'm not sure if I believe. Buckeyes just haven't really been tested yet. Who do you have in this game, and how do you feel about Ohio State so far?
Ohio State. I think, I don't think they started off. They kind of, they're not blowing people out. They haven't pulled off the 70-0 win. I think they're expecting out there, but they've played so well. They're good on both sides of the ball. They're very deep. I like Will Howard. Running game. You got those two guys, and it sounds formidable. With Judkins and Henderson, but you can't play them both. You could play them both at the same time. There's only one ball. So I think they've done a good job in areas where they've had to do a good job, kind of getting everybody involved. Their young receivers are dynamite. I think that they're, to me, number one with a bullet in the Big Ten. They're going to be a national championship contender. They could win a tournament as long as you're a top four. I don't think anyone outside the top four can win a tournament, but I think they have the best chance of anybody to be in the top four. They're going to beat Iowa, and he's lying. Anybody who gets a scholarship to Ohio State is going to go there if you live in Ohio.
Caleb Johnson, liar.
Liar.
Indiana at Northwestern, the most expensive ticket this weekend, $134, because Northwestern only has like 6,000 seats out there.
Yeah.
Indiana, I already mentioned Kurt Sig a second ago. Looking pretty good, 5-0 for the first time since the 90s, I believe. I like Braun out there at Northwestern, but I'm going to go ahead and take Indiana to continue this.
Yeah, I want to see what that atmosphere is going to be like, and that playground that they're in. Northwestern is, I can never figure them out. The Braun, Braun is, I love Braun. They're statistically awful, but they were statistically awful last year, and they won a bunch of games. I just, I really like Indiana. I saw somebody in the preseason pick Indiana dead last in the conference. I couldn't believe it. I had the middle of the pack. I really like Rourke, as we mentioned before. I think they have a lot of weapons. Their receivers are really good.
Yeah, they got some guys over from James Madison that are pretty good.
Yeah, Indiana's a top 7 team in this league to me. I think they win this game pretty easy.
I think they potentially are even higher than, and I don't know if you looked at their schedule, but they play home against Michigan and they have to go to Ohio State, but that's it. They miss Illinois, they miss Rutgers, they miss Penn State, they miss Oregon. This very easily could be a 10-2 Indiana team when it's all said and done.
I am not counting them out against Michigan either.
No,
Michigan does not play enough offense. I really like their chances at home, and for a Michigan team that's used to the big atmosphere. We'll see what Indiana conjures up in that game, but I really like what they have, and Cignetti's he's an interesting coach. He could be a wanted man after. I
was gonna say, I don't know how long he'll end up being there for, but yeah, I tell you what, Indiana could really mess up some things. I mean, it sounds crazy, and people,
somebody always does in the conference.
They're going to lose to Northwestern now that I say this, but they seriously could end up in the playoffs just based off of their schedule. If they end up the third best team in the Big Ten, not having to play in the Big Ten championship, something like that, could be a problem.
It's interesting.
Rutgers at Nebraska. Rutgers also very easy schedule if they're able to win this game on the road. Patrick Mahomes, Dylan Raiola. First of all, I want to ask you what your thoughts are on his Mockingbird kind of I kind of say that, but Abdul Carter kind of copies Micah Parsons sometimes. But I find it a little strange. I don't know how you feel about Patrick Mahomes out there in Lincoln.
Yeah, I could do without it. I come up with your own stuff. I don't mind the celebrations or whatever you want to call it. But I come up with your own thing. I don't love it when Micah do the windmill thing that Saquon used to do. I see guys doing that still around the country. I come up with your own thing, be original. I don't think anyone's gonna fault you for that. But Raiola is gonna be good. I don't know if he's good right now. Am I making the pick on this game? I'm picking Rutgers.
Yeah, you're gonna pick Rutgers.
I'm picking Rutgers.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Rutgers too. Running game travels. Monangai is a really good running back for them. He's gonna be a guy who goes to the NFL, kind of like Pacheco, and they're like, oh, he went to Rutgers. I think he's gonna be that kind of guy.
Yeah,
and it's a battle of two Penn State assistants. Now you think about that.
I believe this would be the only former NFL coaches matchup in the Big Ten this week.
Probably,
maybe this year.
I assume so.
Yeah, and I think Shawn
winner gets
underrated.
Winner gets to coach the Panthers again. I don't know.
Winner coaches somebody
in the NFC South. Whoever
in the NFC South. Yeah.
Michigan, Washington. Michigan is the underdog out west, which hint, hint, nudge, nudge. The sports books think something is happening here. Washington, I will say this: Will Rogers, 10 touchdowns, no picks at this point in the season. Do you think the Huskies can pull the upset?
No, but the line concerns me. Those guys aren't ever wrong. Because I always think, what would you pick the game? What's the score you're picking the game? And if it's in your mind something that's very different from the line, you have to think you're wrong. And I would pick Michigan by 14. I think they're better. I think the bookmakers are kind of overrating Michigan's poor offensive showing last week, but Michigan defensively is really good. I don't think Washington is that good. I think their quarterback's playing very well, but I think it's more of an adjustment season for them. I think they'll be good again, but I think Michigan handles them, but that does shock me a little bit that it was that line really opened my eyes when I saw that.
Yeah, I'm going to take Washington to win this football game.
Okay.
I really think Michigan is just so inept throwing the football, and I do think everyone's kind of writing off the whiteout. They're like, why did we schedule for Washington? I really think that by the time Washington comes to town, that could actually be a pretty important game for Penn State. The way it's being viewed right now on October 2nd is not how we're going to be viewing that, a month and a week from now. So
maybe, yeah. I think I still think they're going to look back and think the whiteout should have been the Illinois game.
Okay. Well,
it kind of was.
I don't necessarily disagree with you because I think Illinois is a good team as well.
Yes,
but again, it's weird with all these teams now and still a lot of bad teams. There's a lot of above average teams that we don't get to figure out whether or not they are above average or good until way later in the year now.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
USC, Minnesota to round us out. USC, close-ish game to Wisconsin. They were down, and then they went on a 24-point run there. Minnesota kept it close with Michigan last week. Where are you going with this one? This one's at Minnesota.
USC. I was actually impressed with how they closed out Wisconsin. I thought when I saw that score at halftime or late in the first half, I thought, USC's cooked. They're life in the Big Ten. They're not going to be able to adjust. It's tougher than they thought. And then they came out and handled it. I think they're a tougher team than they get credit for. I do think we're going to look back on that and wonder how they lost to Michigan. But they did. And they responded. Their backs were against the wall. They had to do it. Good on Lincoln Riley, Miller Moss, all those guys. I think they'll be fine this week. I think, and it's still the Big Ten. I mean, Minnesota played very well against Michigan last week.
Yeah,
you get USC. That's a tough back-to-back. But still, you're going to be fired up for Michigan. I don't know if they're going to be as fired up for USC, even though it's
the little brown jug was on the line. Yeah. They don't have a little brown wine bottle
or something.
I don't know what they would do out there. Just real quick on that game and USC in general, I wanted to ask you, if for something happened to Tom Allen, do you think Penn State could pluck Dan Tomlin away from USC just from a financial, lateral job for DC?
Mm-mm. No, I mean, is he on the James Franklin list? I don't know. Does he do what they like? Maybe, but they're not going to go nuts bringing in a guy who's those younger guys. Almost that I would guarantee almost he's getting more than Manny made. I don't know, but if you're gonna, there's guys out there. You can go get a Manny on the. I don't want to say on the cheap because they're paying him more than because that undervalues it. They're paying him more than defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators used to get paid. So they're making the investment, but you can get a good guy at a rate that's acceptable. And Penn State's proven they can bring in former head coaches. And I think that's a big deal. But yeah, I don't know. See, I think it's much more the Elijah Robinson thing might be a little bit more likely than a Danton Lynn.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, those damn young kids just can't do anything with them.
Yeah, they want more than minimum wage.
So you're creeping right back into your editorial stuff now. You're gone. All right. The only thing left to do is pick your double down game. We got a couple spreads here. You're picking against the spread. USC Minnesota is at +8. Minnesota is 8-point underdog there. Michigan is a 2.5-point dog at Washington, which you picked Michigan, so that would kind of make sense if you want to put 3 points on your prediction there. Rutgers, Nebraska. Nebraska is a 6.5-point favorite, and Ohio State is a 20.5-point favorite against Iowa, which I think is a little high. But where would you like to put 2 extra points on?
I will put the 2 extra points on Rutgers.
Okay,
I think that's a.
You think Rutgers will cover the 6.5, and you had them winning? So
yeah, I had them winning.
Yeah, you had a couple there. You had a choice. So I just want to say,
I think Michigan will win too.
Oh, right.
I think Rutgers could win by more than Michigan will win by.
Wow.
Yeah, okay. I think Rutgers is about ready to. I really like Rutgers I like them a lot better than Nebraska. Now, Nebraska's going to win by 30, but
I just feel like Nebraska is one of those teams that they let Illinois win a game they probably shouldn't have won. I feel like a Rutgers team who's already won a couple close games could also basically take care of the football and just basically take advantage of Nebraska and find a way to win that game. So, but I feel better now that you did that because I wasn't quite sure on it. All right. Only game we haven't talked about. We'll wrap up the show with this. Penn State. I will let you go first. Donnie, I need a score prediction and I need a bold prediction from you.
We'll go 42-7 Penn State. Bold prediction is a tough one. I don't know. It's not a bold prediction kind of game. Can I go? I'll go with.
It can be a player doing something. It can be. We won't have a single raindrop on Saturday. You maybe you'll even say Nick Singleton plays. I don't know. That's bold enough, but KJ Winston runs out of the tunnel. I don't know.
I don't know if that's going to happen. Fleming will score.
That's a good one. See, that's a good bold prediction.
Yeah.
He was right when you were hopping on the show. I was mentioning that Fleming was taking some extra reps after practice today. So maybe they know something we don't, and maybe he's going to be counted on more in the passing game because Singleton's not available. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. Let me go ahead. I will now read Shawn's prediction that he texted me earlier today. Shawn Kane is going with Penn State 45, UCLA 10. And his bold prediction is 3 total touchdowns for Tyler Warren.
Oh, okay.
So now you kind of got a vibe what the bold predictions are there.
Yeah. Is that one each way?
He didn't specify. I think he was smart not to specify. Oh. Yeah, he didn't specify on.
That'd be bolder.
It would be bolder. Usually he's not that bold, and I gotta give him some credit here on his boldness. I don't know if it's the flu that's making him more bold.
Yeah.
But he's coming out bold. I am going to go with Penn State winning as well. I had 42-10. So I'm taking your Penn State score, and I'm actually taking Shawn's UCLA score, and I'm going with 42-10. My bold prediction is I have, based off of Nick Singleton, assuming that Nick Singleton is not going to play on Saturday, which is pure speculation on my account, I have Quentin Martin scoring 2 touchdowns.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Cam Wallace is out. I think Katron gets a lot of carries, but I think Quentin Martin, if you need a guy to be a home run guy, he's going to be the guy that breaks one and find a way to get one early. And then late in the game, who else is going to be in? They're not going to leave Katron. And Quentin Martin really easily could get like 15 carries in the second half of this game.
Perhaps.
That's assuming a lot. But and maybe I don't want my bold prediction to come come true, because that would mean potentially something worse for Nick Singleton, which is obviously how we led the show. Donnie Collins, thanks for coming on the show. Drop a plug. Where can people find your stuff? And well, I think we speak for everybody that we miss having you on the beat, and we're happy to spend some time with you tonight.
I'm still at Penn State TT on Twitter, and I still tweet occasionally during games unless I'm there, and I can't tweet because I'm in the crowd. But this week I'll be watching on television, so I'll shoot some tweets out. But
good, excellent. Do they have any sort of podcast going on over there still? Are they still doing any football stuff, like as far as podcasts or anything like that goes?
Yeah, stay tuned on that. I think we're still debating what to do with the podcast. I did all the editing on that. I wouldn't have time in my new role to do that, so we're looking for somebody to do that. I think that's where we're at with that.
Okay. Well, we got some other scores on YouTube real quick. 38-3 Kent has. Tim Ray says they got to win by at least 29, since that's what Indiana did on the road against them. Appreciate everyone on YouTube hanging out with us tonight. Make sure you've liked the video and subscribed. We will be back Monday night to break down, hopefully, Penn State's victory